and nothing was working. There was no diagnosis. Then the voices started, and that's when it was survive every day. And I think we'll see more and more young lives gone, unfortunately.
The son of one of Hawthorn's all-time greats. Slots it! Oh, baby, that's big! This is his biggest moment of the game so far. And maybe the biggest moment of the game, full stop. It's just about.
Cain Tuck played football hard. Cain was a no-nonsense 6'3" midfielder who played 173 games for Richmond across 10 seasons until he retired from the AFL in 2013. But retirement didn't bring peace or contentment. Life became a dark place for Cain, his mind tormented by strange voices, his family bewildered and frightened.
As time went on, we realised more and more, especially after the second attempt of Cain trying to take his life, it was going to be a very big crescendo if things didn't change.
Cain Tuck came from football royalty. His father was a 7-time Hawthorn Premiership great, Michael Tuck.
The only trouble is the nose is blocked up and it's pretty hard to breathe, swallowing a bit of blood now, but that's part of the game, so you just got to take it the way it comes in.
His uncle, Geelong legend Gary Ablett Sr. But Cain's dad says he wasn't trying to push him. Did you expect that he would have the AFL career that he had?
I didn't really, because he could always play, but he was always worried about my name, and then he had to fill the boots, and ever since he was 12 they asked him, you're going to be as good as your old man, so put a lot of pressure on him. And
he was such a hard-working, gritty footballer.
Oh, he's very tough and things like that, but the thing is that this toughness doesn't seem to work sometimes, but he was always in the bottom of the pack, and as I think he got a lot more knocks to the head that a lot of other blokes wouldn't get.
I don't know that his playing skills all the time were embraced. He was very much just get that ball and get it down the right end. I know that the crowds loved it, and he was having a great time, and he really, really loved the club, and he loved who he played with, and he went hard.
You talk about your brother going hard at the footy. As a person that has been part of this football world, what was the view when it came to contact?
Yeah, I think before our experience and growing up in the 80s, it was the harder the better. I only watched the 89 grand final recently again, and it's quite brutal. There was concussions and punctured lungs, and from the first bounce there was knockouts, and to watch that and think that that was normal back in the day to what we know now is quite scary.
Cain was living in Adelaide with his wife Catherine and his 2 children when it started to become clear something was seriously wrong.
When Catherine rang and said that Cain was in hospital after trying to take his life, that's when we got into 5th gear and got moving, because we knew it had jumped from 50% to 100 very quickly. He was so unwell, and that showed us just how much trouble we were in, and because no medication was touching the side at that point, we didn't know where to go. There was no diagnosis, and then the voices started, and that's when it was survive every day and let's try and knock this out of him, whatever it may be, and nothing was working. So that's when we decided Cain would come back to Melbourne and be with Mum and Dad for a little bit, and I naively thought we could just get him better and he'd go back and be a dad and a husband, and life would go on as normal.
People don't know the battles that CTE families are fighting. Where do you think the AFL is at when it comes to CTE awareness?
Shane's brain was mayhem, so his day-to-day life, who he was, his own mind was turning against him. We had to watch that.
Well, he'd sort of sit in a room and he'd start talking to himself. Actually, 2 doors down from our place here, when he was staying here, he would sit downstairs by himself and he yelled out one day very loudly, like in coarse language, to tell his voices to piss off. And then even the blokes working 2 doors down stopped work. They thought there was something getting murdered up here. So it was just, he just couldn't control himself basically like that.
What were those last days like for Shane?
He was yelling at people that weren't even there, but they were in his head. So, and that was the hardest part. And you try and console him, and well, I shouldn't have said it, but one night I told him off, you know, about time you woke up to yourself, and anyway, he took an overdose of drugs. So I didn't go down too well with the family doing that, but then we didn't know enough about it either. And as I said, if I had known more about it, it would have been better. But it was actually slowly getting worse. And then the day he took his life, he said the night before, "I love you, Mum, and I love you, Dad," and he gave us a hug, and then he went to bed and never come back.
I'm so sorry.
Well, it's very, very sad, but it happens. And for Shane, it was not an easy way out, it was the only way out. So that's where there was a sad part. And he loved his kids and he loved his wife, and then it just sort of ruined his total life.
In the gut-wrenching aftermath of Shane's death, his family made the decision to donate his brain to the Australian Sports Brain Bank in the hope of discovering what had caused the torment in the last years of his life. Dr. Michael Buckland at the Brain Bank discovered Shane had been suffering from the degenerative brain disease CTE. The disease is linked to repeated trauma to the head and often leads to behavioural problems, confusion, dementia, and suicide.
The reasoning I speak on CTE is because it's an actual brain disease that is presenting as mental health. So Shane hearing voices, they couldn't actually diagnose him with schizophrenia because he didn't tick any other boxes. There was so many different elements that looked like mental health, but they weren't. It was brain disease, and that brain disease was caused by impacts to his head over and over and over, therefore killing his brain, short-circuiting it. If you get an electrofield and you throw water on it, it's never coming back to life, and that's what's happening. Your brain's not going to come back to life if you don't prevent that continuous head impact.
Oh yeah, look, it's exciting for young Tucky. Obviously, he's added another game to the Tuck family. He's got a few more to go, but look, we're looking forward to seeing him get out there. Look, one thing you'll find at the end of the game, he's going to get in there and get his hands dirty.
It's now more than 20 years since football great Danny Frawley welcomed Shane onto the field. More than 5 years since Frawley too took his own life after a battle with CTE. Yet despite the growing number of deaths and permanent brain injuries, despite strong recommendations by the coroner in the wake of Shane's death, the AFL has been slow to act. Michael Tuck puts it more bluntly.
Negligence by the AFL technically, because they know what's going on, but they're not doing a lot about it. They say they are, but a bloke might get a week off, but some blokes needed probably 4 or 5 actually to get right over it.
Where do you think the AFL is at when it comes to CTE awareness?
It's too late for us personally, but we've just got to see what happens, how we go. But now they've got plenty of time, and they've had a lot of knowledge about it for the last few years, and they don't seem to be doing much about it.
And that's why I speak up to say everything has a place. There are killers out there left, right and centre, but CTE needs to be spoken of more because AFL is such an Australian vibe. You know, it's what people live for and love, and no one's saying change the game, but you can't not talk about CTE taking young sports people's lives. That's why I just do it for the Brain Bank and the families, Because to rely on anyone else doing it, the AFL, and filtering down to grassroots, I'm not sure that anyone really even wants to face the fact that it's about, maybe it's scary.
What do you think Shane would be thinking about you advocating for change?
He'd be saying, your dramatic attitude finally is coming to some good. But I think he would know that I do this for his children and the children of the future that will lose their fathers, and to save lives rather than ruin any kind of game. It's not about that. It's about recognition. It's about understanding that we lost a member of our tribe simply because he played a sport that he loved and he played it really hard.